Alright everyone, so it's been a couple of days since I started dissecting my TJ Wrangler. I moved the transfer case, the drive shafts, and the Ford 6R80 6-speed automatic, which is actually sitting down there. And that's when I installed the AW4 for the first time, and it actually went in, installed really well. I was actually getting pretty far making a cross member, and as I was cleaning up, after the first or second day of doing that, I discovered a starter issue. So let me move the camera and I'm going to show you the problems I'm running into up here on the workbench. I am using what's called a two-piece adapter. So it has what I call the engine plate and the transmission plate. This is a prototype engine plate. I actually have two of them. This was the first engine plate I had, which is a 10-degree tilt. The second plate I got was a 10-degree and a 15-degree tilt. I set up my engine with the Ford 6R80 for a 10-degree tilt. Now, when I install this plate, you have to have this shield. Put it on like that. Bushings located. I am just going to quickly put two fasteners in. And this is how it looks installed. The transmission is perfectly level, but the engine plate is tilted 10 degrees towards what would normally be the passenger side, which is how it was in my Wrangler. And I was actually on my way to making a cross member to hold the AW4 in place. At the end of the day, I was cleaning up everything, and that's when I noticed the problem here. The ear of the engine is blocking the starter. I even went out and got what is called a extra small clockable starter, and these things are not cheap. And as you can see, there's just no way to get it in here. And if you overlay it like this, you realize just how much you would have to clearance off of this plate. And you can't do that because this hole here and this hole here is what centers the engine's crankshaft to the center of the torque converter on the transmission, or if you were using a manual transmission, the clutch or the input shaft. And you have to have two centering points to make this work. I called the guy that made this adapter because I was a bit confused by this. He thought when I installed the 6R80 I was at a 15-degree tilt, and when I told him I was going back to a Jeep adapter and asked if he could make a Jeep plate, he put it up in CAD, and by tilting this another 5 degrees down, guess what? Starter clears. However, that won't work for me, and let me show you why. If we go over here to my build, my tolerance between the turbo and my steering knuckle down here, I'm trying to get the camera so you can see it. My tolerance between my turbo and my steering is really tight, and there is just no way for me to tilt the engine anymore to get to that 15 degrees. I'm gonna have problems with the steering and the turbo, but also getting the exhaust too close to my brakes. This is one of those weird situations where if this was a left-hand drive and my braking and steering components were on the other side of the engine bay, a 15-degree tilt would work fantastically. Not gonna work for me. So because of everything I just showed you, a 15-degree tilt on my setup just really isn't feasible. Not without basically redoing all the work that I've already done. And I've really looked into it. The problem really is the steering components. If this was a left-hand drive, I would probably just take the engine out, redo all the motor mounts, and make this setup a 15-degree tilt. But because of the steering components and where they are located and how close they are to my turbo, I've decided to keep it at a 10-degree tilt. Now, what that means is I can't run this adapter. So I started looking at other options for adapters, and I came across the adapter from TD Conversions. And I really need to give a shout out to TD Conversions. I asked them so many questions, and they answered every single question I had. They sent me a ton of pictures of their product that aren't on their website, and they told me I could share these pictures as well, so I'm going to put them on the screen. Their adapter can do a 0-degree tilt, which is perfectly vertical, a 10-degree tilt, and a 15-degree tilt. The reason why they can do a 10-degree tilt and this adapter won't work with a 10-degree tilt is that this adapter was set up to reuse the factory mounting location for the starter on the transmission. On the TD conversions kit, it mounts the starter to the transmission plate, not to the transmission directly. So I went ahead and ordered that transmission plate, or that adapter plate, I should say. Unfortunately, it's not going to be ready for 6 to 8 weeks, and with it being Christmas in less than a week, more than likely that means I'm not going to have that plate until the end of February, which just delayed my entire project a good 2 months minimum. Now, the good news is there's still a lot of work that I need to have done. I need to remove all the wiring harness for the Ford 6R80. I need to remove the Quick 6, and I'm also going to be removing the shifter and the transfer case shifter and going back to a stock setup, because it's pretty easy to hook the shifting cable for the stock shifter to this AW4 4-speed automatic transmission. So there are going to be things that I am working on over the next 2 months. But this is a setback that I wasn't planning. But anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again very soon. Goodbye.